Welcome back to Designing with AI, Prototyping with AI, Part 4. I had mentioned that I was going to get into a little bit of inputs and remembering variables and some visuals this time around. However, an idea came to me in the intervening week, and I wanted to explore it because I think it's interesting and a little bit out of the box from where I wanted to go. And we can resume our normal programming after this episode, if you'll bear with me on this little detour. So, in using ChatGPT for prototyping, I also realized that there's a new service that OpenAI is offering called custom GPTs. And from what I understand about it and the dabbling I've done with it, the benefit of creating a custom GPT is that you can seed it with certain parameters or information so that it is a much more specific and focused application for yourself or other end users to interact with. And so I wanted to try this specifically for CBTi, or cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. And so what I did was I accessed the GPT builder, and you can see it here, and it says, hi, I'll help you build a new GPT, and it gives you kind of some prompts. And I immediately just took some visuals I had created for this mock-up, some wireframe screens, and I just drag and drop the images to configure this GPT. And so you can see here, the first ones I'm using are seeding it with 4 rules for better sleep. Okay, and then it answers, great, you have uploaded 4 rules for better sleep. Based on this, I can create a GPT that acts as a sleep coach, offering guidance. And it asked me for a couple of more parameters, but instead I just ignored it and uploaded some more information. So I uploaded something about sleep drive and the whole discussion around building up sleep drive. And I also uploaded something about the circadian rhythm and the details behind that. And this is all standard CBTi information. And it said, great, we'll call this thing the dream guide. Did you have another persona in mind? And I just ignored that. And I uploaded some standard CBTi questions, some onboarding questions that everybody is asked when going through this therapy. How much time are you spending in bed? What's your preferred sleep time, and etc. It said, thank you for providing a comprehensive set of steps from CBTi program. It'll allow Dream Guide to ask users questions similar to the ones you've uploaded. Would you like Dream Guide to take a more clinical approach or more friendly? And I said, yes, it should take a more clinical approach. It should offer follow-up questions based on your responses. It should encourage end users. And also, it should be clear that the intent is to share knowledge of CBTi as a tool, and this by no means constitutes medical advice. Users advised to seek medical professional help when engaging in any treatment for any medical condition. Great, it understood that, and it said, here's a profile picture. I said it's suitable. Fantastic. Now that we have a profile picture, what tone should it have? Be formal and clinical, compassionate, supportive? I said a balance of both. Great. Now that the interaction style is set, what kind of interaction? Do you want it to be structured set of questions or more friendly? I said, give me an example of each. And so here you can see, if the user says, I went to bed at 10 p.m. and didn't fall asleep, here's the 3 structured questions it would ask. On the other hand, if a user provided the same information, here's the flexible conversational approach. I looked at them both and I was like, I think the structured approach would be more meaningful and actionable to somebody. So the structured approach, yes, please use the structured approach. And the GPT builder says, I'm thinking. And finally it said, okay, great. We've got enough information here. We're updating your custom GPT, and we're calling it the Dream Guide, and it's going to be a CBTi focused sleep coach. Would you like to test it out, or is there anything else you'd like to refine? No. It's great. This is wonderful. And we're going to use it. And so now it can be saved for only me, anyone with a link, or the world. And I'm going to save it for only me and try it out. Okay, great. So now we try it out. And here is our dream guide, our CBTi focused sleep coach. So you can see it's providing some simple prompts to get started. Tell me about your sleep last night. And so let's go ahead and do that. So I had to think back to a couple of years ago when I was experiencing chronic insomnia, and I actually kept a sleep diary back then. So I just replicated the first night. And so in this case, I describe, I had a so-so sleep last night and feel tired this morning. This is typical for me, something you might tell a doctor. It said, I'm sorry to hear your sleep quality wasn't great. And it just goes through the standard bulleted lists that it might want to know more about. What's your pre-sleep routine like? What's your sleep environment? Thoughts and feelings you might have had before going to bed? Any physical discomfort? And what is your lifestyle and habits like? Caffeine, alcohol, exercise, diet, etc. And so in this case, to give it the benefit of the doubt, I gave it as much information as possible about my routine so that it could better understand my situation and go off of that. And so I'm just going to fast forward a bit here, providing it I try to go to bed by 10 each night, but it varies. Last night I got to in bed at this, and I slept for this. I woke up this many times. I was awake. And so then it comes back and says, according to those earlier points, your pre-sleep routine, it sounds like you've got a pretty good one, but you might want to avoid, screens, that kind of thing. Sounds like your sleep environment is great. Waking up at night, it's not uncommon to wake up at night, but struggling to fall back asleep can be problematic. Doing things like listening to a podcast can be relaxing, but it's important to consider, is this a provocative podcast that might kind of make your mind more active? It talks about morning wakefulness, it talks about consistency, daytime habits, all that kind of stuff, which is good cognitive behavioral therapy. However, it seemed a little generic for my situation. And I know that having gone through cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia myself, and this was self-driven when I did it at the time, this is still way too generic for what I did. What I needed was much more structured. And so I was looking for this. So in a way, I kind of knew what to ask. So it's starting to make me think, if somebody didn't know what to ask, this might not be as helpful to them. So I said I would like advice on specific CBTi strategies to try. So let's see if it does any better here when I say, telling you a little bit more. I try to exercise, I work, this is what my work's like, this is what my daily lifestyle is like. I try to, follow the 80%, and not overeat. And, my caffeine and alcohol consumption was pretty good at the time. It was the COVID pandemic though, so that might have not been awesome all the time. Anyways, it says, thank you for providing more details about your daily routine and habits based on this info and CBTi principles. Here are some strategies. And so then it goes into a little bit more specifics about CBTi. It goes into stimulus control. It goes into things like sleep restriction, which is a super important aspect about cognitive behavioral therapy that really was one of the things that worked for me. But it just kind of did a generic blurb on it. Then went on to relaxation techniques, sleep hygiene, regular exercise, mindfulness, cognitive techniques, daytime light exposure, regular schedule, screen time. And so all of this is great information. However, it's not really actionable. It's too generic. There's too much at once. There's information overload to a certain extent. And I'm more operating from the just tell me what to do kind of approach here. And I don't think it did a very good job of telling me what to do. So once again, knowing what I wanted out of it was important, and anybody who didn't know that and didn't experience this prior might not know what to ask. So if we look a little bit more, I asked one final follow-up question to kind of get at that specifics. And I said, okay, great. I read through all of this. Okay, that sounds good. But what I really wanted was something actionable. And so you can see that I say, give me something concrete and actionable as a plan to start tonight. What can I do tonight? And finally, when I asked that question, it's like, okay, great. Dream Guide says, absolutely. Here's a concise and actionable plan you can start tonight. Pre-bed routine, start around 9 p.m., begin winding down. Bedtime around 9:30 p.m. Go to bed when you feel sleepy. If you wake up at night, avoid looking at the clock. If you're awake more than 20 minutes, get out of bed. Return to bed only when you feel sleepy. And in the morning, get up at the same time every day, even if you didn't sleep well. Expose yourself to natural light. Daytime, limit caffeine, try to avoid napping, stick to your exercise routine. Evening, have dinner, 2 to 3 hours before bedtime, limit alcohol, all of that. Okay, that's better and it's more actionable, but still what it suffers from in my mind is kind of a program that's outlined, and here's what you're going to do in week 1, and here's what you're going to do in week 2, and here's how you'll feel in week 1, and don't worry, it gets better, and all of these kind of things that are lacking in this conversational experience. So, to sum it all up, I tried a custom GPT, and I invite any of you to experiment with it. I think I'm able to share the link. I know OpenAI frowns upon giving medical advice through chat, and that's not really my intent here. My intent here is this a better user experience. And so if you had, for example, a sleep doctor just, sanitizing all this and making sure it's the correct application of CBTi, even if you did all that, would this be the best user experience that would compel somebody to change their behavior? And just having interacted briefly with this, I'm not convinced that a chatbot approach to CBTi would be as effective as a web app that we could make that is maybe a little less conversational and a little less back and forth, but much more structured and much more able to give a better chunkable learning experience and a series of aha moments combined with actionable steps. So this was my detour into a custom GPT. I'm going to try to share the link with anyone who wants to try it out and give me feedback. Please do. But remember, this is not designed for medical advice. It's not designed to cure anybody of insomnia. It's merely a thought experiment to help test a custom GPT versus, say, an alternate user experience to absorbing and changing behavior with this kind of content. Thanks for listening, and the next installment will be back to our regular program and continue prototyping the web app that we started, the Insomnia app. Until then, bye.